Because we can't just shut the door to the community. We are the community as well, but we need to handle our different hats and roles, right? So we have a constant risk of also unbalancing the community. Okay, a little hitchhiker's guide to the galaxy. This is the man on the moon. It's often used when you talk in traditional project management practices about the importance of having a shared vision, yeah? Okay, so if you have all these different cultures, and they all think about what would it mean to bring a man to the moon, you know? They might have this picture, but it will look in totally different ways in their different heads, right? So how do we get them to actually proceed to put a man on the moon? To make a PyPy implementation. And this is a problem, of course. So let's continue. So we will go a bit abstract here. We'll take an analogy with the solar systems, right? So these different cultures in PyPy, they might live and act from different planets, right? So we need to have dynamic confrontations depending on our different perspectives. So just an example is that we can live on the same planet, right? On the same continent, yeah? But we could also experience that, oh, that person is way out there, you know, living on a totally different planet. That's like Mars. Oh, I can really understand that. But it could also sometimes be experienced as, hey, I mean, what solar system are you talking? Where are you now? I really don't follow you anymore. That's like the Andromeda galaxy or something. And this is, you know, a problem when you talk about cultures, but it's also an opportunity. So let's look a bit about this. Okay, so if you look about working with people from the same planet, it's mostly okay. I mean, you have like a common center. Everyone can see the sun, right? The shining PyPy implementation in the future. And they're generally shared perspective that this is a good thing, right? And okay, this is the project success. But looking at the sun from like Russia or maybe Brazil or whatever gives a different perspective on how you actually need to go to reach the shining PyPy implementation in the sky, right? So that's hard. And the different solutions to getting to that place means that we have friction. You know, what is the best solution? Building a bridge, building a rocket, whatever, you know. Different places gives different views and different solutions. And this creates friction. So we need to explore, what is it to live on that continent? Now, let's take it to the different level. Let's add some complexity. We are not looking at it from a same planet. We're sitting on Earth, and someone is sitting on Mars. And that shiny PyPy implementation in the sky, that is the sun, is looking a bit different. You know, from Mars, it's a bit like over there, right? And from Earth, it's a bit like over there. So we can see it, but it's further away, and we're further away from each other, and it's different working styles, because there are different environmental aspects from working from these different perspectives. So it's harder, and it's more friction, because the cultures are too far away. So we need to explore and add and do quite a lot of work to actually understand each other. So we come back to the cost of information, because we all look at information in different ways. So let's add another complexity, Holger. Different solar systems. So like the shiny PyPy implementation in the sky really looks different if you're in the Milky Way galaxy and if you're in the Andromeda galaxy. Really, really, they can't even see the shiny PyPy implementation in the sky. So, I mean, that really creates problems. Also, when you're within the same consortium and structure, right? So in that sense, you can perceive the others and their cultures and their interests as alien, as a threat. And you start building up defense mechanism because it really sounds weird to you, and it's the totally wrong solution, you know? It's totally wrong, and I mean, we can't go that way. It will not bring us to project success. So it's even harder, and it takes even more time to explore. And the question you need to ask yourself, if you perceive the cultural differences being as this big as different solar systems, you need to ask yourself the question, is it worth it? Is this culture needed within this project? Or is it too much effort going into actually understanding them? You know, is it too much friction? And that is a very valid question that you constantly need to ask, okay? So, the universal truth and also our experience is that all these different cultures have strengths. You just need to actually make sure that you have processes in which they are allowed to contribute their strength. Often the intentions are good, even from aliens, right? So we have these confrontations. Let's make sure that they're dynamic instead of defensive, right? And the challenge is to try to find a fitting model. And also, what are we talking about? The shiny PyPy implementation in the sky. So having that clear goal is very important. Okay. So in that sense, also, it's not just within the project. We also need to be able to talk to other projects that also brings other perspectives. But we do have a good cooperation with SOAP Europe and also Canonical. We listen to how they're working and what practices they use, and also try to implement them and evolve them and also give back to them. So if you're sitting on practices that you think work in your open source communities or your projects, please let us know, because we're very interested. And we're also very interested in telling about our practices that we think work. And we also try to reach out to universities, reaching out to students, also companies, to listen into how they're working, but also spread our way of working. And also, we recently started a semi-cooperation with Alan Kay, the creator of Smalltalk and open object-oriented languages, and he's interested in the PyPy approach. So we're trying to listen into all these larger accepted experts out there as well. And then last CCC conference, we started a cooperation with a company called Impara that works a lot with Squeak. So we're actually looking actively into how can we expand the community in different ways and bring in other cultures into the community. Okay. So conclusion, food for thoughts, is that, it's a tricky thing, this umbrella of PyPy. But if you do have a shared, but also challenging vision, because it can't be easy. If it's easy, it's not stimulating. So that won't, kick people, into action. So also, you need to respect the different cultures and exploit them and exploit the strengths. This is really important. Like, I need to respect that there's been a history in the project, that there is an open source culture. I need to be interested in that and curious. I also need the others to be interested in my background and the things I bring into the project. If we have that, we're in a good way. If we're not, if we're defense-oriented, it won't work. So then we need to design this lowest denominator of structures and constantly evolve and change those, like Christopher Spear says in his work. And room for group learning and creating change, not just reacting to it. And if you're stuck in the defense-oriented way of working, you're mainly reacting to change, and you're also defending against change. And that is the opposite thing of thinking of agile work. So we need to also be the persons who actively create change, and making that fit in an EU funding structure as well. So, year 2, this was year 1, experiences of PyPy. And year 2, we have to survive our EU review in the 20th of January in Brussels, in which we tell the EU funding people in the Commission that this is what we did with your project money, and we are happy with the results, are you? And receive some feedback from their panel of independent experts. We also want to improve, as this hour has been about, constantly improve how we work with the community, how we work with contribution and collaboration. And we want to think about what happens when we're not funded anymore. Do we want to continue as a consortium? Do we want to have this structure? Should it be something else? Are there commercial opportunities for us out there? And we also need to sprint. And we're visiting Mallorca and the university there in January. We're going to PyCon in Texas. We're also sprinting in April in Tokyo, meeting the Free Software Initiative in Japan, who has been gracious enough to host us there, etc., etc., etc. So, this was a bit about PyPy, and if you're interested, there are some links here. Are there any questions? Yes?
You mentioned some problems. Can you say what were the biggest problems you had to deal with?
My first question is on which level? On the consortium level, development level, community level?
Developer level.
Developer level. Well, this, we talk about conceptual integrity, right? And we have core developers. Fortunately, we are very fortunate that there is a good spirit in the community, and they are, as Holger said, accepted. But if, in some sense, we are people stretching. They want the PyPy implementation to take certain steps in certain directions, of course. And we need to think about the EU aspects. And this constant, but there's a good dialogue in that. It's not a problem. It is a risk, maybe, because if we're not listening, we could actually kill the community. So it's more about being risk-aware and giving the opportunity for people having different ideas to try them out within the community context. Yeah? Yeah.
I mean, one concrete aspect, for example, is recently we have had releases where we basically also follow the structure of the EU project because it's our research ambitions. And then there's the community saying, okay, this is now very, very interesting because you have a compiler that can actually translate Python programs to something that runs 50 times faster than CPython, right? So that's very interesting, and you should actually focus on releasing this tool just by itself, not as like part of the whole PyPy project. So there are discussions about this. There are some people who say, yes, it's a good idea, the community wants this, it's very useful. And there's other people saying, well, we have like really challenging goals ahead in the next year to actually fulfill our obligations, you know. And it is challenging, we actually want to do that, and they feel this is something that goes in a different direction. And if you have like 6 or 7 people who are really very much into the project and have to actually glue the whole work together, they of course feel this kind of friction in a different way, because it basically means holidays gone, you know, there's no holidays and stuff like this. And in that sense, that is such a conflict. It's not a conflict that is not resolvable or so, but it's, well, requires discussion, right?
Any more questions?
Yes? Have you already, or are you willing to open source your planning of the sprints, like requirements, like you organize them, like everything you need to do around to get the sprint working?
Let's put it like this. Everything in the PyPy project is under the MIT license. So the way we're working, the tools we create, besides the shiny PyPy implementation, is of course free. So on our website, we have documentations about the development methodology. In our reports to the EU that we submitted now, we actually explain how we're doing it, because we want other open source projects to be actually shorten their learning curve and maybe get interested in the way we're working. So everything is open, and you're welcome to contact us. And we're even interested in visiting and inviting people to our sprints and make that into a learning session, not just about PyPy, because they might be very interested in their own language implementations, but they want to see how we work. So you're actually very welcome to join a sprint just to do that. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions? Okay. Then I would like, oh yeah, question. Yes?
So my question is more related to your talk yesterday. Is it okay to ask it now?
Yes.
I'm really amazed by the idea of client-side Python scripting. And you were talking about Java, you were talking about PyPy running on JavaScript. Will it get stable any time in the future, or will it always be experimental?
Well, it's not about running PyPy on JavaScript. I mean, we generate code that runs in the browser, right? And I think we should discuss the details after that, because it's basically time for the next talk, and it's not exactly fitting to the talk. But like I said, PyPy is not going to be, I mean, you will not have a Python prompt in a browser. Well, that's not quite true. Maybe you get it in some way, but it's not something that is also the main effort. But one of the participants actually gave a talk at OSCON in Amsterdam about this, and there's some experimentation actually in also having stackless JavaScript in a normal browser. I think working in Internet Explorer and Mozilla. So there's like various areas where people are experimenting, but it's a bit of a side project in some sense.
And maybe we can continue the discussion outside. So,
yes.
Okay, our time is up. I would like to thank you. Apparently there was a party, so maybe you're all hungover, but thank you for listening. And of course, you're welcome to contact us. And thank you for your attention. Bye.